speaker is Finola Colgan. Finola is a Development Officer with Mental Health Ireland, and she's the organisation's national lead on farmers, rural and agricultural mental health. Finola is a regular contributor to articles on farming and mental health in national and regional publications, and she co-authored the Coping with the Pressures of Farming paper published by Teagasc and Mental Health Ireland. In recent years, Finola has been awarded a PG diploma in health and wellbeing in the Workplace University of Galway. Finola, the stage is yours.
Thanks very much indeed, Alan. Yep. So good evening, everyone. I suppose the thing I'm thinking about, I've come all the way down to, I suppose, West Cork to discover and meet with some of my neighbours from Westmeath. So I didn't realise so many of you had emigrated down this way. So, and I'd like to join in with Mary in saying it's a pleasure and an honour to be here this evening. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us in Mental Health Ireland to actually explore the whole topic of mental health with you, and it's wonderful to see a male audience as well, because my only, generally speaking, the best male audience I tend to get in my work is when I go into the Midland prison, because I do a certain amount of work there. So I don't recognise anybody from, I don't recognise anybody from my visits there, say. So so no, it's great, and and I'd also like to compliment the Carbery group for taking the initiative and raising the topic as we are about healthy eating. I'm looking forward to hearing what Henry has said, very delighted to hear what Mary has just said. And, we need to get this very important message about protein, about calcium. And now, hopefully, I'm going to address the issue of mental health and well-being. So I'm not going to delay on this, but this is the organisation I work with, Mental Health Ireland, and we have, last year we had this campaign called Hello, How Are You? And the H stands for H, hello, E to engage with the person, L to listen, L to learn something about the person, and then the O, what if somebody wants to open up about not feeling well, where do you start that chat? So I'm going to put it up to you to turn to the person left or right of you. Now, it's not speed dating. To say hello to the person beside you if you don't know them, and say, my name is. Say, That's it now, no speed dating, okay. Okay. So you can find out more about Mental Health Ireland on our website, okay? So I'm going to run a race here with you. I know you're very much a dairy county down here, but I also think there's some horses in the area as well. They're not all just up in Dublin, Wicklow area. And I'm going to run the mental health stakes race with you. So we're lining up 6 horses, starting from the left there, our right, as the case may be, married man, married woman, single male, single female, widow or widower, right? Married man, married woman, single male, single female, widow or widower. So my question is, they're off, which horse wins for the best mental health? So have that chat with each other again. Who do you think will win that race for the best mental health? Yeah. What are you betting? Oh, you've nobody to talk to. Okay, right, it's a quick betting exercise. How many think the married man? Come on, women, put up your hands. How many think the married woman? Okay, single male? Ooh, single female? Okay, so where does that leave us with the widow and widower? Yeah. Okay, so you're all safe betters. No need for a steward's inquiry. You know what? We can all win that race. It can be a photo finish for us all if we all look after our mental health and our well-being. So I'd like to ask you this question. We are so overwhelmed with things these days. Our lives are more or less cluttered. I believe it's this rather than shortness of time. Everyone is hurrying, usually a bit late. Notice that anyone you meet on the street or road have strained faces. It is shortness of time that gives us this feeling life feels rushed and cluttered. Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah. And would you believe this was written in 1924 by Laura Ingalls Wilder, author of Little House on the Prairie. 100 years ago. So the question is, what has changed in 100 years? And I was having a chat there with Henry earlier on. Like, we're now being informed that since the mid-80s, we all actually have an extra 58 minutes for leisure time. And yet, we're all still under pressure. And how much of it has really got to do with how we use that time. And I know Henry is going to speak on that. So we owe it to ourselves maybe to slow down a bit. And this is the other question, and I had a nice chat with Orla about this. As farmers, we call in the vet for our animals, for sure, because our animal is an economic unit, it's a valuable unit for us, and it generates income. And it's very important we keep the animal as healthy as we can. And we know calling in the vet, you know, there's a cost factor involved. But the question is, do we allocate as much time to ourselves in terms of our own health? Because your health, your well-being, your persona, your everything to do with you is every bit as important as an economic unit to your family, to your community, to that. And that's part of what we're looking at this evening about self-care. And if in the morning you said, you know, I'll go off and I'll have my Clonakilty sausages and my Dubliner cheese and so on, and we'll have a picnic. And you go to light the fire. And if you have no match, how are you going to create that fire? Isn't this is the combination we need for a fire: oxygen, heat, and fuel. And a bit like Mary's triangle for health and healthy eating, you know, our health is also based on a triangle of mental health, social, and physical. And, you know, if we're lonely and isolated, what does that do to our feelings, our thoughts? If we're physically a farm accident and we're injured, how does that impact on us in terms of our mental health? We can't form, we can't be independent. So it's really important. And I'm not forgetting about the spiritual side, but it's really, really important that we look after all sides of our triangle of health and give ourselves, because why? The mind and the body, they're not separate entities. You know, they're interrelated, they're codependent, and one feeds into the other, literally, and kind of to remember that from time to time. So, another quotation. There's an Indian proverb that says that everyone is a house with 4 rooms: a physical, a mental, an emotional, and a spiritual. Most of us tend to live in one room most of the time, but unless we go into every room every day, even if only to keep it aired, we're not a complete person. From Rumer Godden, from the book called A House with 4 Rooms. So just for 1 second, think, where do you spend most of your time in that mental room? Or even say to the person left or right of you, where do you spend that time? Do you think? You're all gone very quiet. Yeah. We won't mention about the bedroom or anything, no? Yeah. Yeah, you know, farming is very physical, isn't it? And you know that we need to get this, like, again, we were talking about, do we talk about work-life balance, or do we talk about life-work balance? So we all need a kind of that balance in our lives that we get. You know, if we spend too long kind of in the mental room, do we get worried, anxiety? If we spend too much time in the spiritual room, or our heads in the clouds, if we spend too much time in the emotional room, you know, what's that like for us? And just to kind of put mental health into perspective, and, you know, I mean, statistics are statistics, and we've gotten really positive ones there from Mary. But statistically, we're told 1 in 4 people have a mental health problem. And when people talk about mental health, what kind of language do we tend to hear? Is it negative, mad, not the full shilling? Like, I'm sure you could give me lots and lots of words about that. Or he's gone off the rails. Does that help anybody to feel good about mental health? And, you know, from time to time, 1 person in 4, but that 1 in 4 is each and every one of us. So if those 3 people, be it in a workplace, be it in a family, be it in a community, be it in a community hall, are talking about, did you hear about, you know, he's gone to the mental, and so on, does that help anybody to feel good about themselves, or to be able to open up and have that discussion? So we need to be positive in our language as well. And a guy called Professor Corey Keyes did a research on 1,000 people, albeit 2002, but he repeated the study some years later. And when he did that study, psychological study, proper assessment, 16% of the people were flourishing, 54% had moderate to good mental health, 20% had a diagnosis of mental illness, as in like depression, and then 10% were languishing. And when he repeated that study some years later, he came up with the same statistic. And what I'd like for you to understand is that from time to time, we will all flourish, we will all languish. And again, it's to be mindful of that. what's going on for us when we're flourishing, we're full of energy. Were there days last week you didn't feel in great form? Were there days you felt like languishing? And what does that look like? So when we're flourishing, we feel good about ourselves, optimistic about life, able to make change, keeping stress at a low level. And then if we're languishing, these are just some examples. What's happening? We're feeling hollow, empty, kind of stuck in a rut, don't want to get out of bed, don't want to fill in the form. Maybe feeling isolated, can't cope, can't talk. And that leaves us prone to stress. But again, to remember, we can move in and out of that. And the important thing is if we're languishing a bit longer than we should be, perhaps we need to be able to do something about it and to be able to talk openly about it. So a plan to support your mental health and well-being. We've the NCT test for the tractors now, for the car, and it's very, very important. And we can't go out on the road unless we have everything right. We call in the vet for our sick animals. We have farm safety notices on our farms coming in for ourselves and for anybody that's visiting. And that's really important. So what can be our plan? So there's Connect. These are 5 ways to well-being. And these 5 ways to well-being were based on the whole idea that we need to eat 5 greens a day. And they did a lot of research, the New Economic Forum in London, and they came up with these 5 ways. So to connect. So do we need to connect with ourselves, how we're feeling? Do we connect with our neighbours? Do we connect within our family? Do we talk? Do we have a chat? Very, very important. Be active. Like I was doing up something with my sons a while back and putting in about 5 ways to well-being for farmers. And he said, Mammy, why would you be asking a farmer to be active? Because they're already active, out in the fields, walking. Hopping on tractors, off tractors. But the point is, it's a different type of activity. So you need to find an activity that's good for your sense of physical health, your well-being as well. Take notice. Okay, so how many farmers take note of where they live, the environment around them, take in the atmosphere? I have a husband for a farmer or a farmer for a husband. I'm never sure which comes first. But the thing is that I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a rural town in Lismore. And to take a walk out the country, look at the field, see a cow, whatever, that was the extent of my engagement with farming until I moved to Westmeath. But, I would find it very hard to leave and live in a town or a city after that. That sometimes we need to stand back and appreciate the beauty that is in our farms and to take notice. But it's also important to take notice of how we're feeling. Do we need help? Do we need to talk? And to keep learning. So what Carbery Group is offering tonight is an idea of learning about self-care, but we can also engage with our local edited education, our local libraries, and of course we've lots of opportunities online learning now with various agencies. And to give. So we give, but I think first and foremost, give to yourself. So, the ad that says the lorry lad because I'm worth it. How many times as men in particular do you give a treat to yourself, or do you treat yourself and say, I'm going to do that, or do you wait for the wives or the girlfriends to do that for you? But it's very important to give to yourself and be mindful. And a bit I thought I better use Barry's tea because of Cork. The ad is a great ad, there's talking in the tea. And that's why it's important that we can have that conversation about mental health. And that, hopefully what you've seen there, mental health is about well-being, it's about being the person you are, it's about those 5 ways to well-being. And that we all have mental health, and it's not really an absolute mystery. Orla will be putting this up on the Carbery website. Lots of support out there. So pick up the phone, talk. And I think farmers in particular have a great opportunity to talk because they can talk from the comfort of their tractor. Dial a number, dial the mobile number, and get the help, but never to go it alone. And, I did a survey with 6 farmers recently. It was for a particular reason. One of the questions we asked is why would you like to learn more about mental health? And his answer was quite profound. He basically said that he wanted to understand more about mental health so that he could have that conversation in his kitchen about mental health with his children, because he was quite concerned about the amount, and sadly we know it, that there's an issue around young men and mental health and suicide and self-harm. And I know statistically more young men die by suicide than young women. Women live longer than married men because they look after themselves that bit better. But also it's known that married men live longer because why? The wife says, you're not well, go see the doctor. So if you're not looking after yourself, maybe consider the visit to the GP. And there is that help out there. There's lots of, like Alan mentioned it there, this coping with the pressures of farming. We have this leaflet, the 5 Ways to Wellbeing, that we designed and co-produced with farmers. What are the messages we need to get out there? The Health and Safety Authority have produced a fantastic book right across every aspect of health, nutrition, diet, everything in there, Mary. And it's a really excellent publication. And my last comment is, take a rest. A field that has rested gives a beautiful crop. And we know that, don't we? So that's it. And earlier on in the year, as in last year, I was given the opportunity to speak at a conference in the British University of Egypt in Cairo and to deliver a number of workshops on mental health. So when in Rome, do as the Romans do, I wasn't going to come home without having a spin on a camel. And that camel was 007, a lovely young lad on it, and I did go for a little 5-minute spin on my own on it, Mary, so thanks very much, guys. So I hope you have a kind of a better understanding of mental health and the importance for you to have that conversation. You're not feeling well, do you know what, I'd pick up the phone or say to someone, you know what, I'm not in a great place, and it can all be, the talk is in the chat. And we're very good at, we're a nation of talkers, but sometimes we hold back on our feelings. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Finola. That was fantastic, and I thought your second last slide there about taking a rest was very important, given that for a lot of you farmers here in the room today, this month is the most rest you're going to get ahead of a busy spring calving period. So it's a good time to recharge your batteries ahead of another busy year coming at you.